Hey folks, so we're here today to talk about peer review and what the expectation is for peer review in my English 1101 or 1102 class. The way that peer review is going to work, we have a couple of expectations to start with. The general gist of the assignment is that you're going to complete two peer reviews, and for each of these peer reviews, you are going to do the following things. You're going to create 5 in-text comments all about content. We'll talk about how to create in-text comments. We're also going to talk about what exactly I mean by content here. Um, we'll talk about that later on. I'm going to ask you to answer each of the peer review questions from the document that I will offer you to the best of your ability and completely. I'm also going to ask that you email your 5 in-text comments and answers to the questions to your peers, and that you submit those onto Blackboard. Okay, you will also submit proof that you've emailed those emails to your peers, but we will talk about that later on as well. Okay, so moving on to kind of developing what each of these points mean. What are the 5 in-text comments? Well, you're going to be making these comments in Microsoft Word, I prefer, or an equivalent program if you have a hard time getting access to Microsoft Word. You're essentially going to use the comments tool in that word processor to make 5 comments regarding your peer's paper. Now, remember, make sure that these comments are specific to your peer's paper. You don't want to recycle comments, that you used for another peer review or, you did for the first peer review for this class. No, you want to make sure they're nice and specific so that your peers can easily say, "Oh, I see what's happening here." Okay, they're talking specifically about my essay. It's this part, it's this idea, and they are able to make that connection between your comment because it's specific enough and exactly what they need to do. If you're recycling comments for another peer review, it's going to be vague, right? Because it's just a general idea. You don't want to make it vague. You want to make it very specific. So you want to make sure that your comments are specific to your peer's paper. What you also want to do is make sure that your comments are pointing to the specific location regarding where the issue that you notice is happening. Okay, you don't want to, for example, highlight an entire paragraph uh, to make a comment about the third sentence in the paragraph, right? You only want to highlight the sentence that's an issue, because if your comment isn't super, super specific, saying third paragraph of this or third sentence of this paragraph, your reader is going to think that your comment is referring to the entire paragraph. They're not going to realize that it's happening to a particular place. Okay, so you want to make sure that you help your peer out and that you highlight exactly the place that your comment is referring to. You also want to make sure that your in-text comments do not refer to grammar. Okay, we only have to have 5 in-text comments. Those in-text comments have to be about content. So I have to see that you're thinking about the ideas that the essay is discussing. Okay, not about the word that they decided to use to discuss it, not about the fact that they've got an extra comma here or they're using a semicolon incorrectly there, right? I need to see that you're referencing their ideas and that you're taking them in, thinking about them, and then, helping to build upon the ideas that your peers are having. So that's it for in-text comments. For the next one, well, how do we make these in-text comments? Well, it's pretty simple, to be honest. So I've got a little screenshot here so you can follow along. So basically, you open up your document, your peer's document in Microsoft Word. I am focusing on Word, even though I said you could use an equivalent program, um, because of the fact that at the beginning of term I did ask you to download a copy of Word for free. You can still find information about how to download Microsoft Word for free through GTC from the term materials folder. Okay, if you go in there, then go into tips and tricks for our course, you're going to be able to find how to download Microsoft Word for free. So you open up the document in Microsoft Word, you click the review tab, you can see it, it's got the big number 2 next to it on the screenshot, and then you highlight the area that you want to comment on in the essay, right? And the reason for that is so that you don't, the reason for 2 coming before 3 is so that you've got all the comment functions right where you need them um, the second that you highlight. For me, I end up accidentally unhighlighting things and have to go back and do it again. That's why I recommend this order. So you hit the review tab, Then you highlight the area that you want to show the highlight, and then you click New Comment. Okay, now if you decide to right click and scroll down to New Comment, that works too. They're both the same, they'll do the same thing. But I wanted to show the most straightforward way to do it. So even though my screenshot happens in Mac, yours, if you're using PC, should still look very similar. Okay, so Review tab, highlight whatever it is you'd like to focus on in your comment, and then click New Comment. That's how you make in-text comments. And remember, you need to have 5 of those. Okay, so that's great. But what types of comments should you be making here? Well, I've got a little piece of the rubric pulled up. I've got the full credit section of each of these elements. You can see that this essay has 5 elements. Each of our essays will have 5 elements, but you can see that all 5 elements are present here. We've got content, we have evidence, organization, delivery, and MLA formatting. Okay, so if you look, content, evidence, and organization are all circled. Those are the types of things that I want you to talk about in your in-text comments. Okay, I want you to talk about, okay, so, to go back to the example that we used in the last video, reading as a favorite hobby. um, so if your peer wrote that essay and they talked about sitting in a chair, but they didn't give any details about the chair, right? This is just supporting content. It's not necessarily evidence. It's not anything about organization. So this is just specifically content. So you could leave a comment that highlights the chair and says, "Why is this here?" If you want to keep it, develop the idea more, right? A comment like that. Okay, so that way it can tick off that first bullet point. Essay develops the chosen topic clearly, right? So it helps to develop that idea of reading being stress relief. It also helps develop the idea of the main point that's being made in that particular paragraph. Okay. Another comment that you can make that would be helpful is if your peer's essay is less than the length requirement, and you left them a comment that said, hey, your paper needs to be longer, right? Because that's about meeting assignment expectations. So you really want to, content is kind of big in this particular section of the rubric as well. But also in general as far as the type of comments that you can make. Let's move on to evidence really quickly. So basically, the information that they use to back up the main points. Is it there? Is it specific? Is it described well enough? Right? Each of these questions are things you need to ask yourself. If you find yourself reading a paragraph and you're sitting there going, I don't know that I buy that, then maybe you need to leave them a comment about that. Why don't you buy it? Where did they go wrong? How can they do this better? Right? Those are the types of things that you want to think about and consider leaving comments for. Also, organization. So the thesis statement is part of the organization. Is there a thesis? Is the thesis clear for the reader? Can the reader see the statement of purpose and the forecast elements? Are all those things present? If they are, awesome. You don't need to leave a comment about the thesis statement. But you want to make sure that the topic sentences are relating back to the thesis, right? Can you clearly look at the topic sentences, that first sentence of each body paragraph, and say, oh, yes, I see exactly how this connects back to the thesis? Can you see that? Because if you can't, leave a comment saying that, and then perhaps suggest what the thesis tells you is supposed to be there. Also, if the paragraph order of the essay doesn't quite make sense, right? Sometimes it almost doesn't matter which order you put your paragraphs in, almost. It always matters just a little bit. But sometimes you really need to focus on the order that you're discussing things, especially when it comes to things like cause and effect, or when we're focusing on a particular organizational style, like for comparison contrast, right? We need to make sure that we're following a pattern that makes sense for the reader. If the essay does not make sense for the reader, or the way that the order the essay is delivered in doesn't make sense for the reader, then the writer is missing an opportunity, and you need to tell them. Okay. You also want to tell them, in regards to organization, if the information in the paragraph isn't matching up to the topic sentence. right? Everything in a particular paragraph should be making the point that the topic sentence makes. So you want to make sure that all of those things are working together. Okay, so I want to put that out there. I do want to say one thing. I don't have a visual to kind of accompany it, but really briefly, I just want to say that praise is super, super nice for peer review, but don't leave a comment saying, I really like your thesis statement as one of your 5 in-text comments, right? Make it as an extra one. That's great. Your peer will love that, right? But don't leave it as one of the 5 because the 5 in-text comments are really needing to be about things that will benefit your peer during revision. So saying, I really like what you're doing in this instance, that's awesome. It's a great pat on the back, but it's not that constructive criticism we're looking for. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're doing your peer reviews. All right, and if you run into issues, you're saying, wow, this essay is amazing. I don't know what I'm going to do as far as making comments. How can I guide this person? Ask them questions. That's going to be my best advice to you. Ask questions. Okay, so this kind of talks over a couple of the things that I just said. But how do you frame these comments? Well, these comments that you have to make, these in-text comments, can be a statement regarding thesis statement, overall impact of the introduction, right? Is the introduction providing enough context? Is the introduction clear? Does the introduction do too much? About the topic sentences. Are the topic sentences relating back to the thesis statement? Do they tell you exactly what the paragraph is going to be about? Evidence. Is the evidence used proper for the assignment, or does it not add anything to the essay? In-text citations, if any, are required. For the illustration example essay in English 1101, they are not required. So please keep that in mind. They're not required and not accepted. So please, no outside research for illustration example essay. For all other essays, you may use in-text citations. Please make sure they're formatted correctly. Okay, if they're missing, if your peer is missing an in-text citation, something is not common knowledge, leave them a comment and say, hey, I think you need to cite this, right? Because we don't want to have any issues with plagiarism in here. So make sure you tell your peer if something seems like they got it from the internet or from some sort of other situation. Organization of points. Does the paragraph order make sense? And the overall impact of the conclusion. Is the conclusion leaving you contented with everything that was just discussed? Or does it feel like things happened really, really quickly or weren't wrapped up in any way? Was the conclusion just feeling like another body paragraph? If that's the case, leave a comment about that. Okay? Like I just said a few minutes ago, it can be a question regarding anything the paper discusses, this in-text comment, right? Leave a question. Questions make people think, and that's what you're trying to do for peer review. So leave a question. Um, the point that you're trying to make should be one that's beneficial to the overall argument that the paper is trying to make, not focusing on grammar or mechanics, right? So don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about word choice. Don't worry about delivery necessarily. I want you to focus on content, okay? And don't, unless you've already got 5 comments about content, don't focus on those sentence structures. Don't focus on grammar. Don't focus on punctuation. Focus on ideas. Okay, if something is necessary, or if something needs to be, needs attention, I will let your peer know about the grammar stuff. Okay, but really the focus here is ideas. So in-text comments should look like this, where you can see you highlight the particular area, like I talked about early on in the presentation, and then you just leave a comment about that particular area. Now, notice that when you can see it in the first one, this is as the comment is being made. As after click away from the comment, you can see that your peer can easily tell, the word or the phrase that's being, pointed to by the comment. So you want to make sure that you choose where you want the comment to point. Well, if you need it to be the whole sentence, awesome. If you need it to be one word, awesome. Just make sure you don't let that highlight spill over and just say, it's not that important, because it is. So make sure your peer knows what you're commenting about. Okay, so this peer review questions document that I talked about, you're going to receive a peer review questions document with your peer review groups, okay, right in that email. Your peer reviews or your peers' essays and yours are going to come to you in an email. You're going to receive a peer review questions document. I'm going to ask that you read the questions and answer fully to the best of your ability. Don't leave out any parts of the required answer. There's one question in particular that has about 6 parts. I need you to answer all of them, okay? And don't answer a question yes or no without elaborating why or why not. But that's really, really important. Why or why not is very important to the comment that you're making. Remember, your peer is going to see your in-text comments, they're going to see your peer review questions, and they're going to use those towards revision. So you want to make sure that they are geared to being as helpful as possible. Okay, so questions are going to be copy and pasted into your peer's essay on a new page after your works cited page, if you have one. If you're watching from English 1101 and you're working on the illustration example essay, you don't have a works cited page and you will not have one. So please just just put this after the last page. So after the conclusion. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll go to the insert tab, you're going to click page break, and then you're going to copy and paste onto that new page. Okay, basically, I don't want the peer review questions to be interfering with your peer's essay. I want them to be on the page after your peer's essay finishes. So, in that email that I was just talking about, what can you expect from me? Well, you're going to see your peers' email addresses. I'm going to include everyone in the group in the to line of the email. Okay, so that way you'll be able to contact one another. You're going to receive the peer review questions document. You're going to receive a copy of this PowerPoint. It's not in the list, but it's going to happen. So you'll receive 3 papers. One is yours. There's not going to be any comments on it or anything like that in this email. So don't even worry about it. Don't touch it. This is the paper that you submitted to me, and I'm just returning it so that your peers have access to it. And then you'll also see 2 of your peers' papers. You're going to peer review each of those. Okay? Note that if you haven't received an email from me by the morning after your draft submission, either one, I never received your paper by the deadline and you're ineligible to participate in peer review, right? That's part of the syllabus. Please don't forget. If you don't submit your draft assignment by the deadline, then you cannot participate in peer review. You will receive a 0 for the assignment. So make sure you get your draft in on time if you want to work with peer review. If you did send me your draft before the deadline, something happened, you sent it on Blackboard, somehow I missed it when I was creating peer review groups, let me know ASAP and I will correct this. Okay, as long as I received it for the deadline, you will have the ability to participate in peer review. This is just in a rare occasion that something like this happens. Just give me a heads up and I will make sure to correct it. Okay, um, but note that you are going to receive this email by the morning after your draft submission. Okay, also note that I'm only emailing it to your GTC email address. That is very important. Please don't look for it in your personal email account. Only look for it in your GTC email account. So, how do I expect you to submit these documents? Well, I want you to email them to your peers. That's why I left you their email addresses. And then I'd like you to upload them onto Blackboard. Okay, so there's 2 things you need to do with the documents. Now, emailing the document to your peers, you want to do that before you upload onto Blackboard because you need to show me proof that you've emailed it. Okay, so what I want you to do is email the doc or docx file to your peers using the email address from the peer review group's email. And then I want you to take a screenshot of the sent email, including the time the email was sent. I want to make sure they get it before the deadline, and a view of the attached document. So I need to see that the document is attached. I need to see what the name of the document is so I can see that it matches up to what you submitted onto Blackboard. Okay. I show you in this, in the next little blurbs, how to take a screenshot with Windows and how to take one with Mac. So definitely take a look at those if you're unfamiliar with how to do that. I want you to keep in mind that a screenshot is required as proof that your peer received your peer review. Without your peer receiving your peer review, you cannot receive credit for the assignment as your peer does not receive your help for revision. If you don't email the document to your peer or can't show me proof that you've done that, I can't give you credit for the assignment. So it's great that you submit it to me, but I need your peer to be able to see what you've submitted. This isn't just for credit for me. This is to help out someone in your class. Okay, so you want to make sure that you can show me proof that you have sent the email. So what do you upload onto Blackboard? Well, you're going to upload 4 things, okay? 2 for each. So you're going to upload your peer's essay file that includes your in-text comments and the answers to the peer review questions. And you're going to upload a screenshot showing the proof of email to your peer before the deadline. That is for each essay, okay? Please note that you do not need to email anything to me for this assignment. All screenshots and documents are uploaded onto Blackboard. Don't CC me, don't email me, any of your comments, anything like that. Put it all on Blackboard. Okay, that'll be easier for me to keep organized, and when I go to grade it, it'll all be in one place. Okay, that makes things a lot easier for me, and it means you don't have to hunt me down if you submitted something not in the place that I expected it. Okay, but if you're having any issues with Blackboard or have any questions, please feel free to email me. If Blackboard's not letting you submit information for the peer review, then yeah, absolutely send it to me in an email by the deadline, right? Just like everything else in our syllabus. Okay, if you can't submit something by the deadline on Blackboard, email it to me instead, right? But note that Blackboard is the primary place where you should be uploading. So just to recap a little bit, for each paper that you receive, except for your own, you're going to read the paper. You're going to make 5 in-text comments focusing on content. You're going to read and answer the peer review questions. Insert a page break after your peer's works cited page, or again, if you're watching from English 1101, and you're peer reviewing the illustration example essay after the page that has the conclusion on it, and you're going to copy and paste the questions and answers into that document. Then you're going to email your peer using their email address from the peer review group's email, and then screenshot that sent email so that I can see all of the information that I need and upload both the screenshot and the document, right? Make sure you send the correct document that has the in-text comments and the answers to the peer review questions. Upload both of those things onto Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. on the day that the assignment is due, okay? Make sure that I have access to both of those things for each essay, okay? All right, so thank you for bearing with me as we talked about peer review. Hopefully you find this a little bit more helpful than just looking at this PowerPoint on its own. If you have any questions, something doesn't quite seem to make sense, or you need some clarification, please follow up and send me an email. All right, so I hope you have a great rest of your day, do great things, stay healthy.